Hello and welcome to Cupcakes. In today's video I'll show you how I created this sloth using a Teddy's chocolate orange. The first thing I did was prep my chocolate oranges, and I did this by melting down some chocolate in the microwave and popping it in a piping bag. Any orange which had loose segments, I kept them in the foil, snipped the end off that piping bag and squirted it all the way through the centre and just left them to set. The items I used was a prepared chocolate orange, some icing sugar, water and a paintbrush, a cake card, cocktail stick, I've got a heart cutter, some dark and light brown fondant, red and black fondant, some pink luster dust and a dry paintbrush, I've a Cadbury's flake bar, a sharp knife and a rolling pin. The first thing I did was take some of that dark brown fondant and rolled it out. I did keep it fairly thick to what I would usually roll. Turning it over and putting a little bit of water on the back, I draped that over the chocolate orange, just trying to smooth out them sides and keep it tucked under. Flipping it over and gathering all that excess fondant and just removing it with a sharp knife and trying to neaten that up with my thumb and rubbing it in between my fingers. I didn't worry too much about getting it really smooth because I'm going to give it a fur effect anyway, and I did that by just taking that cocktail stick and scratching that fondant, just making some really small lines. And I kept going until I'd covered the entire ball. The next thing I did was give my little sloth a tummy, and I did that by taking some of the light brown fondant, rolling it into a ball and then an oval, and just rolling that out with the rolling pin. I attached it using a little bit of water, and again using that cocktail stick I put in some fur lines. Next, I tried to create a sloth's head, and I did this by taking some of that pale brown fondant, measuring it up to a size I thought looked okay in proportion to the chocolate orange, rolled it into an oval shape, and then taking some of the dark brown fondant, rolled it into a disc, cut a little bit away until there was a point at the top, and I used this point as a guide to what would be on the sloth's forehead. I attached that with a little bit of water and just using that knife cut away any excess, and again went back in with that cocktail stick and put in some more fur lines. Next I rolled 2 teardrop shapes of that dark brown fondant, and these are going to create my little eye patches for the sloth, and just attach them with a little bit of water. I pushed them on slightly with the cocktail stick, I didn't make any fur lines. Next I rolled a thin piece of brown fondant, and I did make some indentations with that cocktail stick to create some fur lines, and I just sat this under the chin to create a different colour between the tummy and the face. Next I took some of that black fondant and rolled it into a thin strip. I cut away a tiny piece to create a mouth. Then taking a small black ball, I rolled it into a triangle shape and popped that in between the eye patches. To create the eyes, I did the exact same as what I did with the mouth, and that's just 2 small black thin strips and popped them onto the eye patches. I did use the cocktail stick to shape the eyes. I rolled 2 small black balls, the exact same size, and turned them into a teardrop shape, and I popped them on the forehead so they created some little eyebrows for my sloth. Next I took the red fondant, rolled it out and cut out a heart shape, and I attached this to the side of the sloth just using a little bit of water. To create the arms for the sloth, I took some of that dark brown fondant, rolled it into a thin strip, just flattened the end slightly where the hand will be, and using that cocktail stick pushed in 2 lines, measured it back up against the sloth to cut it to where I need it to be for the right length, created some fur effect with that cocktail stick again, and just attached it with a little bit of water. I did use the cocktail stick to help me push it in place, just so with my fingers I didn't rub out any of them fur lines. Before putting the next arm on, I needed to pop the flake in place, and I did this just by putting a little bit of water up against the cheek and the head of that sloth and a little bit on the tummy, and just pushed it in place. I created the other arm in the exact same way as I did just this previous arm. I did, however, roll it a little bit longer, and this is just because I've used it to keep the flake in place, so hugging around the top of that flake, again just using a little bit of water to attach that to the main body of the sloth. Again, I created both legs in the exact same way as I did both arms, popping on some more fur lines and cutting them to the right length. I did cut both of my legs on an angle, and I just found that this helps sit flush to the chocolate orange. I positioned both my legs so it looks like each one was holding to the side or just slightly onto the top of that flake. Again, just using that cocktail stick to help push it in place. Next, I took some of that black fondant and rolled out some teardrop shapes. I rubbed a little bit of water over the end of each hand and foot, and this is just to create some claws. I put 3 claws on each and used that cocktail stick just to help me keep them straight. To finish my sloth, I took some pink luster dust and that dry paintbrush and just rubbed a little bit on each cheek. And there you have it, our chocolate orange sloth. Thank you very much for watching.